This podcast is not sponsored or supported by any business or organization. The views reflected on these podcast episodes are my own. Please be aware I am not a medical expert, travel agent, or any other kind of expert. Hey everyone, welcome to the Explore Love podcast. I'm Ashley. This podcast is based off of my blog of the same name, Eat, Explore, Love. It talks about the unique challenges in traveling around the world when you have celiac disease. Due to sort of popular demand, I decided to also record a podcast to delve a little deeper into my travels and the lessons learned along the way. Welcome to another episode of Eat, Explore, Love the podcast. On this episode, I'm chatting with founder of the organization Wonderful, Kieron James. We talk about his travels and his experience and advice for living abroad. We also talk a little bit about traveling the world being a vegan, something that those of us with celiac can certainly relate to on some extent. Enjoy! Hello, I'm so happy to have you here at Eat, Explore, Love the podcast. Thank you so much for joining.
You're very welcome, Ashley. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on the show.
So, I guess I've done a little bit of research on you. Of course, I'm asking you to come onto the podcast, but I would love to hear in your own words. Who is Kieron? Introduce us to you.
Okay, short question, long answer. I'll try and keep it fairly brief, though. I've been involved in tech businesses for about 30 years, and in doing so, traveled to a few different countries and lived abroad for a while. Interestingly, not all of the businesses taken me abroad, but some of it has, and some of it's been through choice, and some of it's been through design. Actually, kind of trying to find a job that suits the desire to travel and explore a little bit. And some of it's been kind of almost serendipitous. It's just happened, and I've found myself somewhere that I didn't expect to be. But yeah, tech background, starting, scaling, and exiting businesses over that period of time. And prior to that, the first, I guess, real job was working in a trade association in London back in late 80s.
Mm.
Goodness, that makes me feel really old, but yeah.
No, I'm jealous. I wish I was in London in the 80s. It seems quite a time to be in a big city.
It was, and actually, I went down there. Did my degree. My mother insisted I did a degree because I wanted to play the drums. So I went to London really to play the drums in a band, but have a day job that paid the rent and covered that. So yeah, I was there for 5 years. And you're right, it was a great time. It's fantastic. Seemed to be a really vibrant scene. Not that it's not now. I'm sure it's even more vibrant, but it was great for kind of a 21-year-old. I loved it.
Yeah, I've loved London every time I've gone. I've been fortunate enough to go multiple times. So, I guess it's we could start at the very beginning. I've heard it's a good place to start. So, thank you for getting the joke. Uh, so, what inspired you to want to go and get these jobs that forced you to travel, or to even just go and travel on your own? What gave you that bug?
I think the very first thing, it was an odd one. For some reason, when I was working in London, I started to get a little bit fascinated by South America for no good reason. I'd never been there. I wasn't particularly interested in South American culture or music or anything. But I don't know why. I don't know whether it was looking at a map or something and just thinking that seems like a long way away and quite interesting. And then we had that first job I mentioned, the trade association. We had a temp join the business for, I guess, probably a month. It was really interesting, and she'd just come back from backpacking around South America, so could obviously regale everybody with amazing stories. And I was a little in awe, if I'm honest. I was probably 22, 23 at the time, and thinking that seems really plucky. Um, a female traveling on her own as well at that time in Latin America. It wasn't that it was completely unusual, but it was a little unusual. So, I think that the kind of the bravery element of doing it, the just getting out there and doing it, kind of piqued my interest a little bit. Um, so I think once we got to a point, I then got married while I was still in the band and still in that job, and was thinking about. I married a Spaniard, funnily enough, and I was thinking about, well, the Spanish language is going to be good. I'm going to have to learn it, otherwise the kids will take the mickey out of me, as we say in the UK. But they will laugh hysterically every time I open my mouth. So I'll have to try and learn the language a little bit, and that might open the door to some South American travel. So I started to look at what jobs then might open the door to traveling, and it struck me that teaching was one of those career paths that you could choose that would probably allow you to do that job in multiple countries. The kind of flip side to that was my first degree was in economics. So I thought, well, I'll go and learn how to be a teacher of business studies, economics, that kind of field. And then when I started to apply for jobs, it became immediately apparent there were a lot more jobs in things like English, maths. Obviously, I mean, you look back with 2020 hindsight and you go, yeah, well, clearly that's going to be the case. Than there were in economics. And I remember applying for a couple of jobs. One was in Colombia and one was in Mexico. I didn't get either of them, but it was a great interview process. And interestingly, the job in Colombia that I really wanted to get was given to somebody who'd gone from a school in Mexico, which was a school that I'd interviewed for as well. So it seemed like quite a small world. But anyway, I didn't end up in South America at that point in my life. It was firmly in the UK for my first teaching job.
Okay.
And that would have been, trying to think when that would have been, 1996, I guess. I think I
Okay.
started. Yeah. No, 92 I started teaching. 96 was when I did my first international travel.
So that's incredible. And so that took a lot of time where you're building up expectations, right, of what it would be like to go and live abroad, South America in particular.
Yeah.
When you finally get there, how did the expectations match the reality?
Well, this was the interesting point, because I started applying for those jobs, realized that South America was probably going to be off the cards because there didn't seem to be that many jobs. I'm talking about the time, again, this is, largely pre-internet
Mhm.
to any great extent. So you're applying for vacancies that appear in the Times Educational Supplement
Right.
newspaper that comes out once a week, and you write an application and pop it in a post box and wait to see what happens next. So I ended up applying for a job in the Sultanate of Oman,
Okay.
which was completely distinct from where I'd planned to go, but was quite an interesting position. And it was running a training institute in vocational education, but in business. So there's a particular focus on business education in this training institute. So expectations and reality were as far removed as they can possibly be. Literally, I think I'd probably been sent a couple of photographs, again, if I remember, via the post, of what the place looked like, what the training institute actually looked like. Then found myself in a completely different city, in a completely different building. So it looked nothing like that when we arrived. I don't know, you have this mental image of a place that then when you arrive, get off the plane, it's entirely different. So, yeah, but a massive culture shock, not a negative one, but just completely and utterly different from all expectations.
Yeah. What's your advice? I haven't, surprisingly, and I don't know why, I don't experience culture shock. I think I had more reverse culture shock when I had to come back to the United States after living
Okay.
abroad for a period of time. But I think there's been very few places where I've experienced of like, oh, I have to take a second and adjust because I'm not home uh, anymore. But what would your advice be to people going through that process of they want to move abroad but they're afraid of experiencing a different culture, maybe perhaps they're studying abroad and it's their first time going anywhere without their families and such? How do you say that people should navigate that?
I think there are two stages to that. The first is obviously before you go, and that is much easier now than it was the first time I did it, because we do have the internet now. So there's clearly lots more information out there, lots more communities to join, people to ask via various forums, whatever it might be, on what their experience might be like, and to share tips and so on. And the second stage of that is, once you're there, is to embrace it, because it's so easy to try and kick back and expect, almost rage against it, and expect things to be done the way they are in your home country, and that's just never going to be the case. So, a case in point now, I spend half my time in Spain, half the time in the UK. You've got to make that adjustment the moment you touch down in Spain that things are different.
Mm,
And everyone says, yeah, it's a manana culture, and that's a negative, but that's the very reason why a lot of people want to go to Spain. So on the one hand, you want to go because it feels a bit more relaxed, the pace of
mhm.
life is nicer, the climate's better. So therefore, don't complain if things take a bit longer than they might. You can't have both sides of the coin. So
Right.
so I think that embracing is really, really important. We're all different. We all do things differently. There's centuries and centuries of history and culture behind,
Mhm.
any population, and you've got to adapt to that and go into it with your eyes open and ready to change.
Yeah, my biggest reverse culture shock when I came back home was with restaurants, that I had gotten so used to being able to go out, have my dinner. I could read an entire book while I'm just sitting there, and no one's coming and asking me how I'm doing every 10 minutes. No one's they're just leaving me be and letting me go at my own pace, and they're not telling me I have to leave because I'm taking too long sitting there. Whereas in the United States, I think it's a little bit like this in the big cities of the UK, but still not as bad as the United States,
Hmm.
where it's all about how can I get the most amount of tips? How can I, because which makes sense. They're relying upon that to
Yeah,
survive
yeah.
and their turnover. And then you're like, oh, it's so much nicer. I want to be back in Europe, being able to just sit and read my book and have no one talk to me and
Ah,
bother me for a little
completely.
while.
Yeah, no, completely. But again, for the flip side of that is, you've understood why that's different in different cities, and I think going with that mentality is great, because then you go with the expectation that the table turnover is going to be faster. I'm going to be out, and maybe I'll have to take my book to the park after I've finished the meal. And I think that's the difference. It's just knowing what to expect and riding with it, I guess, or rolling with it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. With so at this point now, because you've been going back and forth, living abroad and living in your home country for since at least 1996,
Mhm.
how much of that time has been spent getting to have the experience in different cultures and living abroad? Have you gotten to South America, by the way? Let's
Yeah,
start
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Okay.
So let me go through the chronology a little bit, and again, I don't want it to get incredibly tedious, but yeah. So from Oman, we came back to the UK for a while. We were obliged to do that. It was a failing in the business that I was employed by, not necessarily through any fault of their own, but we ended up back in the UK for whatever reason. And that's actually when I started to run my own businesses. From that point, I wanted to kind of be the master of my own destiny as much as I could be. So I started my first business then, which was in web design, which seemed like a good time to be doing it in the late 90s as the web was starting to open up. So that would have been 98, I guess. Um, Also was working with a guy that I continue to work with now, 30 years later on, who had a business registering domain names for
Mhm.
websites. So there's a real synergy between our two businesses, and it struck me that his was a lot easier because people just went onto his website, registered a domain name, and he got paid. Whereas I was waiting for clients to moan about the designs that I'd done and then spend a long time waiting to get paid. So long story short, that business, the domain names business, was growing very rapidly. I now had at least, well, my kids would argue with me, but a basic understanding of Spanish.
Okay.
And I said to my colleague in the domain names business, look, I'm really interested in getting involved in this. How about I come and open up an office for you in South America? Which is what we did. And they were looking to start to globalize this business.
Mm.
So we just took the basic concept that was running really well in the UK and tried to transplant that in Argentina and
Okay.
and in Brazil. And again, a huge learning curve and a massive slice of humble pie when you arrive there, thinking, "Oh, we'll just translate the website into Spanish and Portuguese. How hard can this be?" And then realize it's not that easy at all. It's
No.
much more of a localization piece than just translating a website.
Mhm.
So that was my next international move, but finally got over to South America, which would have been 2000, I think.
And how was that?
Fantastic. Although I I should probably tell you the story of my first I think it was either my first or my second day there, and I'd gone out on almost a reconnaissance mission to find where we were going to put the offices and talk about the legals. So I was out there for about 3 weeks before coming back and then going out, a few months later, full time. And I was taken to a restaurant for a meal by the lawyers who were also touting for business. So they were trying to again impress with a nice flashy meal, and they took me to Buenos Aires steakhouse, and I'm vegan and have been for a while at that stage. So I sat down in this steakhouse, and the waiter wandered over, and I said, "I'm vegetarian. Is there anything you can recommend for a vegetarian in Buenos Aires?"
Oh boy.
And his very witty response was Bangalore. So I thought that was brilliant, which is basically you're in the wrong country.
Yeah.
Um, and then the lawyer started asking me, see, hang on a minute, you're in Argentina, but you don't eat meat. So I said,
Hmm.
no, I'm not a meat eater. Um, the waiter then came back and said, what can I get you guys to drink? And I said, well, I'm soft drink because I don't drink.
Oh
So the
geez.
lawyer's looking even more confused now, and he said, so you don't eat meat and you don't drink. Which football team do you follow?
Oh
I'm not
no.
really interested in football either. So he
Oh my
said, so
goodness.
no meat, no drink, no football. What on earth are you doing in Argentina? So I was rattling my brains for a quick response. I said, I want to learn to tango. And that was the best I could do at short notice. But yeah, again, kind of I'm sure it's a very different city now, 25 years on. But
Mhm.
at that point, not a great deal for vegetarians, certainly not a great deal for vegans, and pretty tricky to navigate.
So let's talk about that because like we were talking about before we started recording, I have celiac, and that is the whole purpose of why this blog and podcast that I've been creating has started. There are challenges in traveling when you have any type of dietary restrictions. So how much do you take that into consideration before you go and transplant yourself into another culture and country?
Yes, I think it's a really important, and I think there are a difference between your situation and mine, in that mine isn't kind of critical to health. Like if I were to eat something by mistake, I'm not going to have any particular side effects. I wouldn't want to do it, but it's just more of a decision, a personal decision to go down that route. So there's no critical path there that I need to be concerned about. But at the same time, it is important to me. I think again, I'd go back to the fact that now you can do research ahead of time, a lot of time, and read those reviews on restaurants that you're going to visit, and do read the reviews, not just the menus, because I think that's quite important.
Hmm.
Um, only yesterday, my daughter, who's also gluten free, was telling me, she was at a restaurant in London that she'd asked for gluten free vegan tacos in a restaurant, was served with something which she was a bit nervous about because it didn't look like it was gluten free.
Hmm.
Again, she's not celiac, but she's it's quite important to her. She suffers from Lyme disease, so it's a good way of controlling the symptoms of that for her to
Inflammations, yeah.
avoid gluten. So they served this, and she'd asked, I think she'd asked A, before she'd gone, B, asked the front of house when she arrived at the restaurant, explained the circumstances, then spoke to two waiters, confirmed with both of those that it was gluten free. And literally, she'd eaten one of these before the waiter whizzed over and took the plate away from her. And she said, "I'm guessing it's not gluten free." "Oh no, no, it is. It's just we've served it. It should have been for a different." So they wouldn't admit that it it had gluten at all. So that was really quite challenging for her.
Yeah.
Um, so I think the research, and that's where the reviews are come in handy, and just checking those out as well. Um, and then being really careful about descriptions as well. A vegetarian sandwich in Spain isn't a vegetarian sandwich. It will often have something like tuna in there, which is just really odd, but that's what they call a vegetable sandwich.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just
That's
I think
good
it's
to know.
it's tread very carefully.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I didn't realize that in certain countries, I guess that makes sense because everybody has their own understanding. When you go to someone of a different generation, they're going to have a different understanding
Completely,
of what it means. So, of course, different cultures would have that too.
definitely.
That's hilarious. For
Yeah, you often get the thing when it's only being cooked in chicken stock. It's absolutely fine. You'll get that kind of thing frequently. So yeah, it depends how passionate, how important it is to you, and as you say, if there's a critical path there that's to do with actually having a negative, immediate adverse effect on your health, then you've got to be even more careful, of course.
Right, absolutely. So, to circle back to something that we got before we got into all the food conversations, how long, when you're traveling someplace and when you're making someplace your new home, how long do you, because, and I'm speaking to like the ignorant American that we only have Canada and South America as our neighbors. We don't get to go and travel abroad and experience different cultures as easily. It makes, which has created this feeling of more trepidation in going and moving abroad, let alone traveling abroad. So I only got to experience Italy for 9 months, not even really with that because I had to do a little bit of a Shenzhen shuffle for a little while. Um, how long do you feel like it would be important to go if you're going to move someplace to go and settle down for when you're actually immersed and experiencing the culture rather than just continuing to be a tourist someplace?
Can I turn that question directly back to you and say, how long did it take you? Because I'm intrigued as to what your response is and whether that varies depending on where you go to and how different those cultures are. Did you have a sense of kind of, being homesick for a period of time when you first arrived in Italy? Did you not? I'm intrigued.
uh, no, but I also was just itching to get away from
Right.
everyone and everything, and this was what I always wanted to do. So the dream, living the dream, outweighed any homesickness I might feel. I'm used to living alone. So
Right.
I think that helps in when you're someplace else by yourself. You're just someplace else by yourself. Yeah, I think the closest I've ever gotten to that homesick feeling was, oh, I wish this particular person were here to experience this
Right.
with me, but not that I wish I was back in the United States. I actually went back kicking and screaming. I did not want to go back. I went back because I had to.
Right. No, because I have experienced it, and I don't think it's unusual to get that sense of,
I'm in the
you
minority.
arrive,
Yeah.
it's kind of different from you anticipated, not always different good, sometimes different fantastic, and much more than you ever anticipated it being. Argentina for me was just fabulous.
Mm.
Oman was really great and a wonderful, wonderful place to visit. I've not been back since, and I'd love to because it's a long time ago, but I definitely remember those evenings when you just think, have I made the right decision? And I think your question's probably around, do you need to give it a period of time? Yes, I think you do, because there's just that mental, cultural, emotional change that you've got to try and adapt to. And like any other change in life, whether it's physical or mental, it can take a bit of time sometimes to do that.
Mm.
I think it's useful, and again, probably much easier than all those years ago when I was first doing it, where it would have been, I'm thinking about when we were in Oman. It was, did we have a phone? I don't think we even had a landline. I think it would have been going down to wherever to make a phone call home abroad. Um, so that was challenging, keeping in touch. It
Yeah.
certainly was pre sending somebody an email, even if that existed. Certainly not, my family weren't connected to email and so on. So I think having some touch with some contact with home is really useful, even if that's a book, a photograph, or collection of those kinds of things that you can go, yeah, I remember what it's like, and then kind of seeing what's around you, and weighing up whether in the long term that's going to feel like a better place to be.
Yeah.
I think we've always gone with a view that no, I think when we first went to Argentina, we did go with a view that, yeah, this could well be a move forever. I
Mm.
think since then, we've never really done that as a family. It's always been, let's explore, let's see what happens, let's spend a year, let's spend a couple of years. If it
Okay.
doesn't work out, then we'll go home, wherever that might be.
Do you always go back to the UK as your home base to whenever you're deciding on the next place, or is it immediate? All right, this location's not working. This is the next stop we're going to try out.
No, I think the UK we'd probably all call home, or all of the family, one way or another. And again, that I think we've sown that seed with the kids because they're all big travelers. My eldest daughter's been literally all over the world, more countries than we've been to. Um, and my youngest has travelled. Well, all three of them have travelled really extensively as well. But my youngest is living in Spain currently too,
Mm.
with a view to going always somewhere else, whether it's Portugal or somewhere else in Spain or who knows where. But yeah, I think all of us would probably go. is home the UK? Probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and now it feels like we have, certainly myself and my wife have a really nice balance because we spend pretty much half the time in Spain and half the time in the UK. And it feels like a really great balance in that we're in London in the UK and then in a fairly small place and a very quiet place in Spain. So that's really interesting as well. I was asked on another podcast quite recently whether I worked differently in those two locations, which I've never been asked before.
Mm.
And upon being asked that question, it struck me that I do, that I tend to do more kind of longer term project based work when I'm in Spain, where there are fewer distractions. And in London, it tends to be a lot more kind of frenetic, and it'll be meeting to meeting to meeting to, cramming as much as I can into the few days that I might be there before I go back to Spain to get my head down again. So,
That makes a lot of sense. I do feel that too, that I have my personality changes based on the culture that I'm in.
yeah,
I feel I was talking to somebody about this the other day that when I don't think I was talking to anybody. I was talking to myself while I was recording a podcast, but I was talking to another one of my personalities, so it's another person. But with when I was in Europe, I felt myself, I didn't even notice that this had happened to me, but my father came and visited me for the last week that I was there, which happened to coincide with my birthday week. So he was always coming, and it just so happened that that was going to be the last week I was there. And with his energy coming in, I realized how much I had calmed down and chilled out a bit and was willing to go with the flow. And during those 9 months, I was splitting a lot of my time between the UK and Italy. So I was also doing a similar thing to you where I was going back and forth between the two different types of energy. But even when I was in the UK, I was usually in the countryside, so it was fairly
right.
relaxed. And Italy, even in a city setting, it's usually pretty, like I said, reading a book. You could spend hours at dinner and you could be there for breakfast the next morning if really you wanted to. But now that I'm back for 2 months in the United States, I already feel my blood pressure going back up and getting more intense and more, even though I'm in the south of the United States, which is also supposed to be the more chill version, but just the energy of everybody is so frantic all the time that I definitely feed off of that. And I think that's also why I'm like, I need to get back to Europe somehow
Yeah, yeah,
because I'm
yeah.
definitely calmer. So it's interesting and makes total sense to me that you feel that way just going from the UK to Spain.
And I think it's nice to be able to do it the way we're doing it now. It's
Mhm.
it's just happened to work out. We were doing a similar thing, which started, I guess, during COVID because we had a accommodation in London tends to be smaller because it's so expensive. So we had a small flat in London, and then we thought, well, I don't want to be here all of the time where you literally can't go out. There's no real outdoor space, and where's to go. So I think we ended up with a place well, I don't think we did. We ended up with a place that we rented in the Cotswolds,
Mm,
and we drive up there and then spend a few days kind of in that slower pace and then back down again.
yeah.
But I do enjoy going back. For me, that frantic pace, it's nice. It feels like you're recharging the batteries as well. And that might sound odd, but the
No.
energy leveling is great too. So I enjoy that split. It's good. The other thing for me, even in traveling on holiday, we've tended to do a similar thing for all of our married life, which is one of the holidays, at least one of the holidays that we take in a year would be in the same hotel, actually in the same hotel room, which sounds extraordinary for people who enjoy traveling and seeing the world. But there's that sense of you don't need any time to decompress because you know exactly where the restaurant is that you enjoy. You know exactly where the mini bar is in the room. You know exactly what to expect when you arrive. So there's that sense that the moment you put your suitcases down, you're just going, "Whew, I'm here. I can now relax." And I think that's really, really great too. Whereas you go on a holiday to a brand new location, a brand new hotel, you're kind of finding your way around, and there's probably 24 hours of adjustment there. So but that's something we've learned and we really enjoy. People look at us in horror and say, "You go to the same room," but we'll probably do another holiday if we can somewhere else that's a bit more exciting as well.
That's I love that idea. I am probably going to steal that one if I have enough PTO in a job I ever take, or if I go full flown freelance. I'm going to steal that idea.
It is really nice. I do recommend it highly.
So I want to talk about Wonderful. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So Yeah, I'm just thinking we could probably tie this into travel in a well, in a very different way, in that the travel was from an airport door, sorry, not airport door, an airplane door to the floor, in the sense that Wonderful got started when my son made a very short journey, which was a skydive. So he jumped out of an airplane to raise some money for charity.
Okay.
Um, and at the time, we were running a telecoms business, and you'd think that would be the most exciting thing that would have happened that day, my son jumping out of an aeroplane at 17 years of age. But actually, what was even more exciting, and the thing that we remember most, was later in the day, he came downstairs and he was really, really angry. And he said, I've just, spent so long trying to get myself together and get the energy and the enthusiasm and the bravery to make this jump, and also convince all my friends to give me a load of cash for this charity. And I've just discovered that a big chunk of it is not going to reach the charity at all. It's going to get lost along the way through fees from the fundraising platform, through deductions from card payments, and all the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, long story short, we said, well, what can we do? Let's build a completely free online giving platform. I've got some great engineers in the business, in the telecoms business. We'll see whether they can give up a bit of time, and we'll build this platform, and we'll fund the first chunk of money that goes through the platform ourselves. Whatever the costs are, we can meet those for the business, and then we'll look for a bigger corporate sponsor. So that's how Wonderful got started. That was back in 2016. And the big problem that we ran into was the cost of card processing. So all these donations, as they started to increase, we were going back to our corporate sponsors constantly saying, can we have more money? We need to pay for card processing. And it created this quite low ceiling on our impact and reach. We really couldn't grow the business because we were just constantly asking for more cash from corporate sponsors.
Mm.
We found the solution in something called open banking, which allows us, with this new technology, to move money really, really quickly, cheaply, and securely from one account to another without using cards. And kind of that's how Wonderful got born. So we've now taken that idea. The whole of the fundraising platform now doesn't rely on cards anymore, and we are commercializing that idea for small businesses to make it easier for them to get paid and much cheaper. So that's Wonderful.
Yeah, that is wonderful. I was seeing a video the other day that there was a whole debate going on about small businesses, and that I'm now noticing on my receipt that I'm getting charged to be able to use the credit card because they are getting charged to
Of course.
take the credit card. Um, but apparently, that's how we're all able to somehow get our points so that we can do all of our traveling for free, is through those charges. So I
It,
guess nothing is actually free, but
no,
in the United States, it looks like Congress is trying to pass a bill where that is no longer a thing. So we're no longer going to get that charge, but that would also mean we stop getting points on our credit cards. So we could stop getting, being able to use it for whatever we need it for. So that was an interesting internet debate. But I think that you guys using this for charity, this all starting from a place of charity, is quite beautiful, and actually gave me an idea of maybe what I should do for my birthday next year is raise funds. And are you still able to use your platform for that purpose of for charities and stuff like that, for people to be able
that's exactly what we do. Sadly, we're UK based because of, well,
to?
a couple of things. Really, one of them is around diligence and onboarding charities, and it's very easy for us to do that. The second is, until we have, I guess, probably a partner in the States, it makes no sense. Remember, this is 100% philanthropic, that venture at the moment. So we probably don't have the bandwidth to think about internationalizing it right now.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of merit in doing so. But to your point about the kind of points and so on, we would say it feels like a last line of defense a lot of time for the cards, in that this is what you get, and our view from a retailer's point of view is, ultimately you're paying the card networks for their loyalty scheme. So you're paying for them to give a VIP lounge or air miles or whatever it might be to their customers. It doesn't benefit yours. So if we reduce your cost of processing payments by 95%, run your own loyalty scheme that's actually targeting your customers and give them free delivery or whatever it might be that's beneficial to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting world, as you said. There's probably nothing is genuinely free ever. You're going to pay the price at the end of the day as a consumer.
Yeah. Well, I guess money makes the world go around, right?
I guess it always will. Yeah, yeah. But it's not. It's one of the questions and one of the challenges we've always had with Wonderful on the fundraising platform side is, what's the catch? There must be a catch. But it did genuinely just come from a really good place, and we thought if we can build it, if we can keep our costs to a manageable level where we can fund it through corporate sponsorship, then why not do it? It just feels like you've got some amazing people in fundraisers, donors, charities doing fabulous things all day. If we can join that virtuous circle and help and support it in some way, that feels like a great thing to do.
Yeah,
Um, and thankfully, because of technology, we're able to continue doing that kind of 8 years later and remove that ceiling now. So it's good.
that's amazing. I also love that, and it says a lot about you that every story that you've had to share, it's always been a family affair. And your family has always been super involved, and that's a beautiful thing that you guys all get to have all these experiences and memories and powerful things that you get to do and share together. So that's
We,
incredible.
we were at dinner last night with another couple of friends of the family, and the guy was saying it's really great because I've just started working with my son on a project at the moment, which I've never done before. Now I'm really enjoying it because he's a bit older now, so it's we're re-engaging and so on. And it struck me that all of the kids in my family at one time or another have been involved in one of the business or the other business. So my daughter is co-founder of Wonderful.
Mm.
My son worked as a coder. My daughter's written copy and done all sorts over the years. So no, it's great. We definitely share all of that, which is lovely.
And I love that you've inspired the love of travel for them as well, that they're getting to experience all of that. I'm jealous. I wish my parents did. We only went to Disney World. That was it. That was our big trip that we got to do.
But it's amazing. I think that it's one of the things my wife and I joke about because she's the least likely Disney World fan that you could ever imagine. She hates queuing up; it's not in her culture. She hates rides, and she absolutely loves it. You know, we do go back still
Yeah.
regularly.
Every time anybody poo-poos it, I'm like, nope. I was telling a quick story, and then we'll wrap this episode up. But I went for my birthday this past year. I went to Disney Paris by
But
myself, or Disney Euro, I guess, however anybody wants to call it.
whatever they
But
call it, yeah.
yeah, I was like, I've been to Disney World so many times. I just want to see what it's like in a different culture. And my brother is autistic and obsessed with Disney, obsessed with Mickey Mouse, and that's a common trait for children with autism. So I was like, all right, I have to wait on the long line. It was an hour and a half long line to wait to take your picture with Mickey Mouse. And I was like, I felt bad because I was surrounded by children that actually were into the magic of it all and wanting to see Mickey, and I was just trying to get a picture to make my brother smile, and I didn't want to. And the moment I saw Mickey Mouse, my voice went 5 octaves higher. I got so excited to see Mickey. It's like I am 29 years old and I'm acting like I'm 5 years old when seeing Mickey Mouse. It's really incredible the magic that it creates.
It really is. I mean, they've absolutely nailed it.
Yes.
Although I will say they should have put Euro Disney in Spain. It seems odd that it ever. I'm probably going to upset everybody. So to all the French listeners, forgive me, but
It would be way more convenient, I'm sure, if it was.
way more convenient and a much nicer climate than Paris.
Yes, yes, that's true. That's true. All right. It was lovely speaking to you, and I've taken up way too much of your time. I ask every guest that I have the same three rapid fire questions. Could I ask you those before we go?
I will do my very best.
Okay, perfect. What is your favorite food city that you've ever visited?
Verona.
Really, that's where I lived in Verona.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, Verona. Wow. That we went there for our 10th wedding anniversary. Sorry, it's a short question.
Oh,
10th wedding anniversary, and I think we went there pretty much every year afterwards for about another 12.
yeah.
Love it. What a
So worth
city.
it. Love that. Oh gosh, I could go on forever. But do you prefer a vacation that requires you to relax or be active?
Relax.
What is the city where you learned the most about yourself?
I would say Nizwa in the middle of Oman. So yeah,
Okay. That's
from
a,
it, just because of all that, that massive culture shock and the difference and
mm,
everything, it teach me a huge amount, probably more than anywhere else.
if it makes you feel any better, London is my answer.
Ah,
Not for the culture shock piece, but my first time abroad was in London. So
right.
special place in my heart there. Where can the people find you?
Wonderful.co.uk is the business website. Wonderful.org is the fundraising platform. LinkedIn is Kieron James. Those are probably the best places, I would guess.
Perfect. All right. And we'll make sure that everything with Wonderful, that the links are in our description for the show notes for the episodes. That way everybody can find it easily. No excuses to give to charity. To not give to charity. Sorry, that was what I meant. But thank you so much. This was a lovely conversation. I loved hearing about all your adventures, and I can't wait to hear more. So thank you so much for this chat, Kieron. I appreciate it.
Thank you ever so much. It's been my pleasure entirely.
Hi everyone. We are now beginning a new branch of the Eat, Explore, Love family by introducing Lee Francis short stories. Starting August 1st, once a week, a short story will be released on leefrancisshortstories.com. These short stories will be based on the travel adventures, personal stories, as well as creative inspirations that you may or may not have read about and listened to on Eat, Explore, Love. As a special bonus, we will be releasing the audio versions of those short stories on Spotify and Apple Podcasts through the Eat, Explore, Love the Podcast forum. If you have any stories you would like to share with the EEL audience, feel free to reach out on hieatexplorelove@gmail.com to collaborate. Looking forward to growing and creating with you. Make sure to sign up for our monthly newsletter on leefrancisshortstories.com to keep up to date on the latest. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to check out Wonderful. Be sure to check out Kieron James and all that he does and is able to accomplish. Hopefully we'll be able to have him back on the podcast to talk about more of his travels more in depth. Till next time. Thank you for joining me this week for all the fun journeys and lessons learned on my big adventure called life. For more information on the different cities discussed, check out the blog posts on eatexplorelove.com, posted every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you have any questions or fun stories to share, feel free to reach out at hieatexplorelove@gmail.com. Until next week, remember to eat well, explore the world, and love yourself. See you next time. This episode is produced, scripted, and edited by me, Ashley. Special thanks to Sarah Mientka.